The Trump administration has announced a tremendous trade deal with China. Global stocks are starting to skyrocket here in the U.S. It's looking like the markets are going to jump about 3%, over 1,000 points. So massive news for people's retirement accounts, 401ks, all across the board. Great news. Now, China is going to keep a 10% tariff on the United States, but the U.S. will keep a 30% tariff on China. Trump says this is going to help bolster American manufacturing and compete with the cheap labor that China has. Essentially, a minor victory. But liberals are arguing Trump won nothing. All he did was make a huge mess and then backtrack when realized it wasn't working. Well, Scott Bessent says that when Joe Biden came into office, what they found was that China simply stopped adhering to their obligations in these trade deals because they knew he would do nothing about it. So there's a couple of ways we can look at the story. Donald Trump slamming his fist on the table, threatening China with a trade war, forcing them to back down, get back into shape, and adhere to the obligations they already had. Or look at it this way. Trump just scored a 30% tariff on China to help bolster American manufacturing without completely wiping out the businesses that are reliant on Chinese manufacturing. Let's jump into the story. I'll show you the details that we do have in the statement from the president. We do have this from CNN. Take a look. Pre-markets, as of right now, the market is open, but of course, CNN has it updated pre-market. We're looking at 2.5% for the Dow is up. S&P is up 3%. NASDAQ futures 3.85. So all across the board, really good news. The New York Times says global stocks jump after U.S. and China cut tariffs. A temporary reduction in punishing tariffs agreed after weekend talks between American and Chinese officials signaled a de-escalation in the trade war between the world's two largest economies. And we can see a major rebound. Very good news. They say futures for the S&P 500 suggested that U.S. stocks would open 3% higher when trading begins in New York on Monday morning, which would be the best day for the index since April 9th, when a huge rally was spurred by Mr. Trump pausing his reciprocal tariffs on all countries except China. Futures for the tech-heavy NASDAQ climbed about 4%. And they go on to mention a bit more. We know this is pretty massive. They say the U.S. would reduce the tariff on Chinese imports to 30% from its current 145%, while China would lower its import duty on American goods to 10% from 125%. After the statement's release, the U.S. dollar strengthened against a wide range of currencies. U.S. Treasury yields also rose. Elsewhere, Hong Kong's benchmark Hang Seng Index jumped about 3%, while Europe's Stoxx 600 rose about 1%. Oil prices, which are sensitive to expectations of global economic growth, also rose, gaining more than 3%. Despite the recent recovery in markets, investors have remained anxious, et cetera, we know. They say Mr. Trump's on and off again tariff policy, the highly staged managed de-escalation between the U.S. and China on Monday was notable for providing more clarity about the potential contours of Trump's on and on-again, off-again tariff policy, said George Saravelos, global head of foreign exchange research at Deutsche Bank. He noted that China, which runs a huge trade surplus with the U.S., now faces a 30% tariff, while Britain, which has a relatively balanced trade relationship with the United States, reached an agreement last week that resulted in 10% tariffs for most goods. It is reasonable these two numbers now set the bounds of where American tariffs will end up this year, a material increase in visibility from just last week. So, of course, I mentioned we've got the, I don't know if we have market open just yet. We don't have the data yet. They're still tracking data from Friday. After hours, we can see if we've got any similar news as a pre-market. So it's looking pretty dang good for all y'all's 401ks. We do have this statement. U.S. announces China trade deal with Geneva. This was just yesterday, with Scott Bessent saying that they've come to an agreement. This was huge news, and immediately pre-markets, after hours trading started to skyrocket. Now we have this video, which I want to play for you guys from Scott Bessent from the White House about China and what they were doing during the Biden administration.
What has to happen is it has to be fair for the American people. But in January 2020, President Trump produced a template. We had an excellent trade agreement with China, and the Biden administration chose not to enforce it. The Chinese delegation basically told us that once President Biden came into office, they just ignored their obligations. So, we already have a large framework. The other thing to remember here, Jonathan, is that this is a pause down to 10%. The April's second level for China is 34%. So we will be working to see where their final reciprocal number ends up. And the negotiations are a combination of tariffs, non-tariff trade barriers, currency manipulation, and subsidies of labor and capital.
Very interesting. So it's interesting to me that we have a lot of liberals right now saying things like this wasn't a deal at all. This is just Trump walking things back because he realized he screwed up and was causing problems. I disagree. Listen, first, for the people that didn't fall for the liberals' trap in believing the fake news, they were fine. So when the news broke on the tariffs, I didn't sell any of my stock or any of my investments. I don't have that much. I have a good amount, but it's not like retirement money or anything like that. I didn't sell, and I've completely recovered, 100%. Like, I'm not literally in just like the S&P. I've got a bunch of different stocks. Mine have all recovered. A lot of tech stocks and things like that. So going pretty well. The people who bought and really believed in Trump that it was going to play out, they made a lot of money. But I know liberals are going to say that a lot of people sold because the market was dropping and they panicked. You got to believe that Trump's got a plan for these things. And at the very least, I just said, I'm not going to react and panic to what Donald Trump is doing. That's what Trump said. He called them panicans, which is a weird word, but sure. Here's the issue. Biden's administration, according to the Trump White House, was not enforcing the trade obligations China had, meaning China was able to get away with ripping us off. If, at the bare minimum, Trump did nothing, but, like, let's say Trump really did say 145% tariffs, and then a month later, it's like, okay, no tariffs anymore. The goal is to reset where China is at, so they get back to upholding the obligations they have. Now, that being said, I don't know what obligations those might be, and it certainly is an easy way to say, we win, guys, this is why. So I'm not exactly sure what those obligations China wasn't adhering to was, but let's also address the hard numbers. A 34% tariff remains. This is textbook big ask. Donald Trump comes in and says, we got free trade, basically with China, minimal tariffs. 145, everybody panics. Okay, 34, everybody cheers. And get this, the liberals that are saying Trump did nothing, he just walked out of the way back. He convinced you that a 34% tariff on China is nothing and he's abandoned everything. That's the play. I don't know if Trump's got any grand plans. I don't know if he's just shooting from the hip. Probably. But we are currently sitting at a 34% tariff on China, which we didn't have before, and the market has nearly completely recovered. Pretty amazing if you think about it. Now, we have this fact sheet from the White House. They say today the U.S. issued its first joint statement on in many years on trade with China, negotiating in Switzerland. Both parties affirm the importance of critical bilateral economic trade. For too long, unfair practices and America's deficit with China have fueled the offshoring of American jobs. In reaching an agreement, the U.S. and China will each lower tariffs by 115% while retaining an additional 10% tariff. Both sides will take these actions by May 14th. The trade deal is a win for the U.S., demonstrating Trump's unparalleled expertise in securing deals that benefit the American people. He says China will also suspend its initial 34% tariff on U.S., it announced on April 4th, for 90 days. The U.S. will remove the additional tariffs imposed on China. It's going to keep Section 301 and Section 232 tariffs. They will suspend its 34% reciprocal tariff on April 2nd for 90 days, but retain a 10% tariff during the period of the pause. The 10% tariff continues to set a fair baseline that encourages domestic production. By imposing reciprocal tariffs, Trump is ensuring our trade policy works for the American economy. So it may actually be that they suspended the punitive tariffs down to 34, and then as of this morning have announced they're pausing that to 10%, giving us a flat, equal tariff with China. Now the question is, let's check this one. Were there any tariffs on China before? Let's say just before 2025. Let's say before Trump got in office, we'll get the total amount of tariffs, and let's see if it's 10% or less. Because I'll tell you this right now, before the day even comes in. If Trump really did walk it back down to 10%, I'm curious what exactly they did accomplish here. Let's see. U.S. tariffs on China. Trump initiated these tariffs in 2018 and 2019 with ranging from 7.5% to 25% on specific goods, largely related to technology. Phase 1 deal. So it looks like this is okay, wow, this is really interesting. It's a blanket increase to 10% is, at bare minimum, a full-on new tariff for a lot of different goods, a blanket 10%. So, again, I'll stress this. Before Trump made these moves, there was limited to none. According to the data I just pulled up right now, I mean, I'm not in economist charts and stuff, but there's a 10% flat tariff now. Before, it was selective on certain goods related to technology and intellectual property. They affected specific goods ranging from 7.5 to 25. Now there will be an additional 10% on everything. And so not 34, it looks like. Could be wrong. Either way, it looks like Trump was able to big ask a tariff play. If Trump announced a 10% tariff on China, market takes a hit. People get worried. But this, and especially with liberals saying that Trump has backtracked on everything, it's convincing the markets, at the very least, that we're back to base, and we aren't. The market's recovered. Probably going to go up way more. Very interesting. And then we do have this joint statement on U.S.-China economic trade meeting in Geneva, which, yeah, we get it. But major news this morning. We have a lot of other news breaking this morning. Of course, Trump will be signing an executive order related to drug prices. Of course, liberals are once again angry, calling it hypocrisy and making fun of MAGA. I just want to say this, guys. If you're really liberals and Trump is lowering the cost of drugs, you'd say, thank you, Trump. This is fantastic. Instead of saying, haha, we're getting something good, they're saying, I thought this was communism, MAGA. Well, I don't know, whatever. You're winning, right? You got something you wanted? What are you complaining about? I'm going to leave it there, my friends. Stay tuned. Smash the like button. Share the show with everyone you know. Next segment will be coming up in a little bit, and we'll see you all then.